Folks, thank you for tuning in to this special edition of Habs Tonight, joined by none other than Nick Kypreos. Kipper, we appreciate you jumping on here.
My pleasure, Drew.
Well, on behalf of Dale and the entire crew, we thank you for jumping on. We got a little bit of breaking news to kick the show off. This was rumored last week after the St. Louis hire, Kipper, but we got Vinny Lecavalier joining the Canadiens as kind of in a special advisor role. We've also got Nick Bobrov coming in as a co-director of amateur scouting. So what's just your initial reaction? You heard this news not too long ago yourself.
Well, first of all, I thought the breaking news was going to be that you're wearing a New York Ranger jersey.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Vinny Lecavalier is a pretty big name. No question. They know each other well. And I speak of Kent Hughes, the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens. That relationship, they know each other very well. Let's face it, Vinny Lecavalier is a big name when it comes to Montreal, when it comes to Quebec, and it's a name that people in the community can resonate with. Not overly surprised based on the relationship that they've had over the years, i.e. agent and player, and we'll see where it goes to the next level. I like Vinny. You know, there's at times, Drew, when you watched him in his career and you said he could be a lot better. I know he had a couple of great years in Tampa Bay, but overall, I think we should be speaking of him as one of the best and a Hall of Famer. He underachieved a little bit as a player in the grand scheme of things. I hope this direction where he goes with Montreal Canadiens and management, he can find a nice place.
With St. Louis here getting his first win last night. Now, just shifting gears a bit back to Marty here. The impact he's had on this Cole Caufield kid, man, 4 goals in 5 games now. Like, you know, you think someone can be inspired, and then you kind of really see it happening here, Kipper. Do you think it's a storybook here with Caufield getting that winner last night?
I think it's early, but it's certainly heading in the right direction. I know Montreal Canadian fans are so disappointed on a number of levels. The biggest one is where they are in the standings. But we all watched Cole Caufield come in and do what he did in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and you just thought it would be a natural progression into the regular season, i.e. 20, 25 goals, rookie of the year, all of that. It doesn't happen. And that's just the hockey gods, and we'll never be able to explain it. He's got all the tools in the world. He's not ever going to be a physical player. And yeah, you can draw comparisons with Marty St. right? Smaller player, but I can tell you St. Louis was a powerhouse. Again, you see those pictures of his legs and the sheer strength. And not only that, but the work ethic to go into a gym and do what he had to do to rub elbows and shoulders, albeit sometimes on a step ladder, with the big boys in the National Hockey League. And Marty did it. The commitment and the level of excellence that guy hit is something that Cole Caufield needs to look at every day and be reminded. Now, again, Caufield will never be as strong as Marty St. Louis out on the ice, but there's other attributes that he can take along with him. And hockey IQ, again, Marty, one of the best. That's where Cole's got to learn how to be a smaller man playing a big man's game and still having great success.
So in terms of impact on the rest of the Canadiens, what do you make of Marty getting his first chance? How do you like the hire just from an overall look here?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. It's a long shot, to be honest with you, to have someone step in that environment with no experience at the pro level, the NHL level, is monumental. And the beauty is that the team has bottomed out. There's nowhere to go lower. So he is really starting with house money in the casino. And if he can kind of parlay that and be in a position where he accumulates some chips and buys himself some time, he can eventually get into that the respectability or the credibility of being a National Hockey League coach. But right now, it's not there. There's the reputation. There's the the commitment to excellence as a player, but now how does he change that into coaching remains to be seen. The good news is he's got time to do it. And we'll see how this thing kind of finishes off in the regular season. There's no question in my mind that he's going to be the coach of the Montreal Canadiens next season. You don't go this far to bail out 3 months later. He's in it for the long haul. Hopefully he builds some credibility with the guys and his ability to reach them, to be in a position where there's a connection, and we see it with the effort and the structure on the ice, not with the wins or the losses, but what we see over the course of 60 minutes from one game to the next. If he can connect with them, then he's got some building blocks going into next season.
Now, just when you look at what Rod's been able to do, Rod Brind'Amour in Carolina, has there been another most recent player out of the game that's been able to have success other than Rod at this point?
Not one that I can think of. And again, usually, in my world, you go and you start somewhere in the East Coast League or the American Hockey League, or you take on a position of an assistant coach behind the bench. And that's where Rod started. That's where it moved quickly, which again makes Marty St. task that much bigger and harder, that he comes in right away and becomes the chief behind the bench. But the strength of Marty St. will be undifferent than Rod Brind'Amour, that the players can look those guys in the eye and know that they did it. They're just not talking the talk. They walked it. They did it. They were successful. They're Stanley Cup champions. They're all-stars. And there's an incredible amount of respectability and credibility in that. Some others have a difficult time. Colleton in Chicago is a prime example. They moved Joel Quenneville out. They put him in there. Not a lot that the players can look at Colleton and say, where did you come from? Who are you? What have you done? I think it was a challenge for the likes of Taves and Kane and players underneath to look at certain coaches and not get that same spark in their eye that they would talking to a Marty St. or a Rod Brind'Amour. And that's just the way it is. There's no question, but that can only take you so far. Then you've got to get into other aspects of coaching, and that is line changes, tactics, motivational talks where, it's outside of the rah, and I did it, you can do it too speech. That'll all come into play over time for Marty.
Now I look back at, I want to get into in a moment, some stuff with you and the Rangers and what you were able to accomplish, but you mentioned Stanley Cup there, and Rod and Marty both have that pedigree of having done it, having won it. So like how much of, like you just said there, Kipper, does what they say factor into eventually just becoming programming for the guys to just get out there and do themselves?
It's just repetition. And sometimes as a coach, you have to, you got to strip the bad parts of someone's game individually, or their mindset, or how they're built. And some of them get rebuilt, and some of them don't and fall by the wayside. And eventually Marty or Kent Hughes or Gorton will have to get rid of those guys. Marty will come in the first month or two and look down his lineup and say, yes, we can win with Suzuki. Yes, we can win with Anderson. No, we can't win with Hoffman. No, we can't win with, Gallagher as a top 5 in our lineup, and make his necessary adjustments and assessments. But no question that that's going to take a little bit of time and maybe a good portion of next season. How do they look at next season? And a continuation of where they are now, or a team that wants to contend for a playoff position next year? That's a mindset in itself that really has nothing to do with the players, but just a philosophy on how you're going to build in the next 12, 18, 24, 36 months. So we'll see where it goes from there. And of course, Drew, the question of of where does Marty St. Louis factor in and what to do with Carey Price. That's the big one. And that will tell us a lot about the philosophy of the management team and Marty St. Louis when we hear Carey Price is going to be back next season, or we're going to find him a place where he can be happy moving on.
I have a hard time at this point not seeing Carey want to try at least one season under Marty. That's just my initial impression, but we don't know that quite yet. Although Carey did say, of course, they're settled there. But what's your impression of what you think's going to happen? Do you have a gut feel on it or not yet?
Yeah, well, first of all, my gut feeling is Carey will play this season. It's really important, and I know this, that it's important for Carey to get a few starts under his belt so he doesn't have that hanging over his head all season long, all off season going into next year. I don't know whether next year means a Montreal Canadiens uniform or not. But overall, Drew, I'm sorry if this isn't in the same direction as you, but it is over, man. It is over. They got to turn the page. They got to find him a home. They got to alleviate that $10.5 million on an AAV. And the timing just doesn't work for Marty, Carey, and the future of the Montreal Canadiens. This team needs to be stripped down and rebuilt, and it won't come off the back of Carey Price.
Well, I think reality has to set in at some point. And I think Dale even mentioned it not that long ago that he feels like it's probably the best option for all parties concerned.
I think he's right. And there was a window there where Marc Bergevin went for it, and they came close. And Carey, you say what you will about the team, Carey Price came real close to winning a Stanley Cup last season off his back. And I think there's other teams that feel like once Carey gets over his health issues, he's still got maybe 3 or 4 more years where he could do that. I think there's going to be a market out there, Drew, for Carey Price. Now, what does that mean on the Montreal Canadiens and how they can alleviate some of that cap that comes with his contract? Does it mean absorbing 50, 40, 30% of that contract? Does it include a third team to help alleviate, again, more of a cap hit to the team that Carey ends up? It's doable because Carey is still, in my estimation, in his prime as long as he's healthy.
Yeah, and that's why I think Habs fans would rest a little better if we at least saw him end on a high note, however that looks with the Canadiens, Kipper. But I want to shift gears here because I don't want to take too much of your time today, but I got your book here. A bunch of us fans have read it. One of our newest co-hosts just got it for Christmas, Kipper. Really enjoyed it. And
Thanks,
really, I had a choice. I'm telling you the truth here, not just to, pump tires or anything, but I was looking at the shelf at Shoppers Drug Mart about a year and a half ago, and I see Bob McKenzie's book. I see Brian Burke's book. I see Nick Kypreos' book, and I'm trying to get into broadcasting myself. Had 2 interviews with Sportsnet recently, and I picked yours. So I just wanted to say it related to me a lot. So let's talk a little bit. How cathartic was it for you to put that out there, man?
Well, it was quite honestly, it's like a therapeutic session with yourself where you can now be in a position, Drew, where you can really look at your life, in a very clear, concise manner over the course of a year. That's how long it took me to put this book together, along with Perry Lefko, Simon and Schuster, and my wife also co-wrote it as well. So between the 4 of us, it gave me a chance to really reflect. And, Drew, the biggest issue, or not the biggest issue, the hardest thing for us athletes to do is ever fully embrace and enjoy things that we've done in the past, because we've been so programmed to stay in the present or look after the immediate future. You never really have a true chance to look in the rear view mirror over a great length of time, unless you're doing something like this, writing a book, where you have to really exercise your brain to go back and remember the finer details. And every time I started a story, you'd spend a few days after that and go, oh, there's another piece to that story that I remember now. And that's a great thing for, I think, all of us to do. Even if you don't write a book to put it on a shelf at Shoppers Drug Mart, it's actually a really good exercise for all of us to kind of look back at our lives and see those forks in the road and figure out why things happened and what was the reason. There's a great movie called Sliding Doors where, the basis of the movie is what life is if you get on a subway and if you don't. And that's the way I kind of looked at my book, in terms of everything happening for a reason. And listen, if Sportsnet hires you one day, Drew, you can go on and do great things, or, them saying no could be one of the best moves that happens because it leads you somewhere else. But the whole key in all of this is that there's a current out there, and sometimes you can fight it, and there's sometimes you need to go with the flow. And that's what I loved about the book the most, is that, whether it sold one copy to you or a million or zero, it's just about the way you feel about yourself and the path that you took and where you ended up.
Well, yeah, I see you as kind of a guide along this path because, I watched your interview with Steve Dangle and I read your books back to back. And the name Drew Dekes actually kind of, I mean, if you really look at it, Steve Dangle, Drew Dekes.
I like it.
Right. So you talked to Steve about that and how, like, are you going to get a bunch of guys, all the other sports team YouTubers in the ring for, for a battle someday? And I just chuckled at that. And I thought, what?
You'll be in there too.
We've had him on the show. We've chuckled, and he's got 15 years behind him. So all the power to what he's doing, and I hope to keep up with it. That's the main thing. But Kipper, I want to,
and it's a build, Drew, right? It's a build, and it's just you can't go from A to C without getting to B first. So that's just trust the process. We hear it in pro sports all the time from coaches. Trust the process. It's no different for me and you and anyone else in the broadcasting world.
It is, and that's why I do trust it, and staying encouraged on purpose too. Like, you got to keep yourself encouraged. I want to touch briefly just on what to me is probably the most famous picture in your life. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
but this is right out of the book too, man. Like, do you ever get tired of talking about this Rangers '94 team, man? I imagine you don't.
The answer is no, and you think over time. 10 years, 15, 20, gosh, almost 30 now. And you're like, it's gonna fade, but it doesn't, because there's still that generation that kind of reminds you every day. I go back to New York. The 20-year-old kids aren't coming up to me as much as the 55 and the 60-year-olds that thank me and want to buy me a drink or a beer or a dinner. And it's amazing. And I don't have to tell Montreal Canadian fans or that older generation where they've got the most Stanley Cups, but you remember them. We all wish that we could remember them a little bit more vividly past 1993, but not much you can do. But the memories there, whether it's the Canadiens, for us, the Rangers, we were the first ones in 54 years. And to think like the Ranger fans are almost halfway through that again reminds you that people still like to think of the here and now and the present. But great memories, great people around me, still great friends with, Messier, Richter, Leach, Glenn Healy, Stefan Matteau. Just not the superstars, but the plumbers like me, and at the time, Ed Olchuk, Mike Hartman. It's just, you're bonded for life, Drew. That's what they tell you, and it's absolutely true.
Well, it seems that way, and that's why, shout out to my buddy Trevor, who's a big Rangers fan, lending me this nice piece today, because finally had a chance to put it on for the first time, and that's, for a good reason. If I may, just a couple more quick questions on the book, just because there were some things that jumped out. And you mentioned closure, Kipper, from Ryan VandenBussche and how your career ended. And it was a closure that you didn't know that you needed. So can you just talk about that experience for a moment?
Yeah, absolutely. We all envision ending our careers on a high note. That certainly didn't happen for me. And when we decided to maybe bring Ryan VandenBussche in the studio with Sportsnet to kind of revisit that and revisit, the whole place of fighting and where we are in the game today. I didn't know really what to expect. I thought it was more of about uh, maybe a sound bite or just the mere fact that we're together that would draw interest, and that would be it. It would be like today what they call in social media clickbait. But the moment that I really got to talk to Ryan, and Ryan and I talked to Ryan on a real brief, hi, how are you? I'm okay, and that was it. But I didn't know Ryan VandenBussche as a person as much as when I got to interview him on Sportsnet, and to understand his side of it, and to understand how he felt at the time. I never put myself the whole time in his shoes or in his skates until I got to interview him on Sportsnet. And it was a huge wake up call for me, because I was always, in terms of, picking out a word, I was the victim, right? I was the guy that got hurt. Woe is me. But never did I ever put myself in his shoes. And when he started speaking of how it affected him, and if I was to have really gotten hurt or possibly died that night, how would it affected him the rest of his life? So that was me for the first time putting myself in someone else's shoes or skates. And it really helped me understand, what had happened, why it happened. And yeah, to your point, total closure. I saw him as a human being and not a guy that just ended my career. And that just takes me to a whole new level of moving forward the rest of my life.
Well, you really got that sense in the book, and that's why it seemed cathartic to have that experience with Ryan, and that's so great. That kind of brings like a healing touch, your way, right?
Without a doubt. And I think, there's different levels of that happens to all of us in our lives. And the book's called Undrafted, and it's someone that was never expected to be there, and then looking back and reflecting why and what certain things had to happen to get to certain points. And I know that we all dream of being a Gretzky, a Lemieux, a Pat Kane, first pick overalls, destined for stardom, but that's only 0.001%. And the rest are like me and you, Drew, scratching and crawling and fighting our way, to find a different path. So that's what I hope that the book brought you and anybody else that reads it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think one thing that's unique, and I could, there's a lot of things I could pull out of it, but one experience about a celebrity that you met in New York, I just have to ask because because selfishly a Superman fan. You got to ride the elevator with Superman himself, Christopher Reeve, just before his accident, I believe it was, Kipper.
Yeah.
So what was that experience like, even if it was just brief? It was in the book, right?
Yeah, it was. And that's the beauty, Drew, of being in New York. And, when I was younger, too, I was a little starstruck as well. So the whole idea is when you play, you're a New York Ranger, you're a pro, you got to act kind of cool and and the whole time you're just like this kid jumping up and down with an autograph book. And the hard part of being in New York is just not getting caught looking up at the first 3 or 4 rows and going, oh, there's Robert De Niro, and there's Susan Sarandon, and there's Christopher Reeve, Superman. And, we got to know some of these people because they were true hockey and New York Ranger fans. Christopher Reeve was a tremendous supporter of the New York Rangers, loved them, came to games, did charity work. We did charity hockey games with them. The family, we got to know the family. And, the first time riding in that elevator, and no word of lie, like, he's a big man. He could have been a great defenseman. I told him, you could be a great stay-at-home defenseman, 6'4", shoulders out to here. And the whole time I'm looking at him and I see the red cape and I see the S. And, it's a shame we lost him so early because, one of those guys that, was genuine. Sometimes you get caught up in these celebrities and it's, they're a little higher. They think they're a little better than the rest of us, and not the case with Christopher.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, I won't keep you here. We could go on, but maybe just a final question here. With the Rangers, being in the fold, Jeff Gorton here, former GM of the Rangers, just for Habs fans' sake, what do you make of maybe what moves they make before the end of this season, Kipper?
Well, I think they understand the task here. And it's clear that they want to change the look of the team, but it's not going to come overnight. But they've got assets that they can move, and we still assume that that's going to happen. Ben Sherratt, we know, should garner a first rounder, and that in itself would be a huge accomplishment. The name that everybody keeps calling them about more than everybody is Josh Anderson, but if they get an offer, they can't refuse. I think they could move him, but they don't want to move him. They need a guy that they don't grow on trees. The Josh Andersons, big, strong guys that can skate like the wind. I mean, he is in the scope of being a big man that can play the game and have great hands and shoot. Tom Wilson's another one. You don't get rid of those guys, but you got to be patient here. And there is the off season as well. They don't have, if they get offers and they get a team that is pushing really hard for certain players, then maybe, you're in a position now to move. Lekanen, who doesn't want a 7, 8, 9 forward that can check this time of year. So those players have value, but the value that comes back, you're going to have to be patient with. And if you get your price, then that's great. If not, you've got off season, you got the draft. There's time for Kent Hughes and Gorton to turn this around. Unfortunately for Hab fans, you may have to eat a couple of crap sandwiches for a while longer.
Well, yeah, facts are facts, right? I mean, we have to face the music at some point and realize that a rebuild is, one step away. A Carey Price trade is, it's one step away from that's when the rebuild is fully on. So,
hey, listen, I know you're kind enough to get me, back shoveling the driveway with my wife, but I just wanted to mention. A beverage company that my wife and I had started a few years ago called Little Buddha Cocktail Company. We've got 2 flavors. We're in the LCBO here in Ontario, but we hope to have it in Quebec real soon and right across the country. But just a shout out to my wife, who's done an amazing job. Little Buddha Cocktail, a little bit different in terms of no sugar, better for you ingredients, carrot juice, pumpkin juice. Hopefully, Drew, you've had a chance to try it.
You know what? True confession. My wife tried it before me, Kipper, and that's what I was just trying to tell you is that I still haven't tried it, man. I'm like, no, I have to.
Yeah.
She enjoyed it, man. She likes the less sugar-filled drinks. So she enjoyed it very much.
Well, good. For Drew, me personally, I've been in hockey my whole life, and it's the safe thing to do. Broadcasting, you do what you do best, or stay in your lane. But I think for me personally, it was important to the last few years to try something different. Take all the lessons that I've learned out of hockey, the work ethic. There it is. Thanks, man. Take all of the principles that I've learned in the game of hockey and apply it somewhere else. And we've been able to do that so far. We're just little minnows, Drew, swimming amongst sharks, called White Claw and Cottage Springs. But so far we're doing great. And I really appreciate the mention.
Yeah, no, of course it's cool. And that's another venture that you've taken, while writing the book. You guys had a lot of time to get creative during COVID, right?
And it's been a huge challenge. Usually, when you do something like that, you're allowed to go into the stores and do tastings for potential customers, and you get to know them. We couldn't do any of that as well, but we're going to be setting up online. People can order it right from their phones, have it delivered. So, out of this pandemic, there's a few paths that people can get to it that could add a little bit more convenience in their lives. But so far, it's been a lot of fun. We're hoping to branch out. We're only 2 years in. Come April, we'll be in our 3rd year. So it takes a little bit of time, but so did my career, right?
Well, here it is again, guys. Little Buddha, you can, as Kipper said, you know where to get it now. So definitely looking forward to enjoying one, my friend.
All right, now I got to go shovel.
All right. Well, anyway, thanks for coming on, Kipper. Once again, Habs Tonight thanks you on behalf of Dale and the rest of the team. We thank you for coming on. It's a real pleasure. We hope to have you on again, my friend.
Hey, Drew Dekes. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. And keep up the great work. Okay.
Will do, my friend. Thank you. Nick Kypreos, folks.